Welcome to the Horror Next Door. This is all the horror movies we watched in June 2023. Links to our Letterboxd accounts are in the description box below. If you like this video, would you kindly subscribe?
First up for June, just a couple of quick mentions because we have already discussed these two films in prior videos. I rewatched Terrifier 2 from 2022 on my Blu-ray and Mayhem from 2017, which is on Tubi. Just a couple of really great movies that I don't really get sick of and really enjoy and have a lot of fun watching. Definitely recommend both of them very highly. Next up is Killer Sofa from 2019, which was watched on Tubi. First of all, just to get it out of the way, it's not even a sofa, it's a recliner. Secondly, the poster art or cover art is completely inaccurate. You will never see anything like that in this film. Thirdly, although this was not given a wonderful rating or anything, it was actually pretty fun to watch. It's hard to recommend because The Killer Sofa should very much have been the absolute focus of this flick. However, they go wandering off in so many other directions and go into all these convoluted little things and plots and reasonings that they want to insert in here. It starts to feel like it's taking itself way too seriously, which removes all of the fun. It makes it very hard to recommend that someone seek this out. Even the kills, it's a killer sofa, a killer lazy boy. You don't really get to see much of anything going on. There was one exceptionally weird kill where we saw pretty much nothing other than a guy being super creepy and weird. Yeah, so I'm having a hard time saying yes or no just because the premise of this is so absurd that it does have to be seen to be believed. But it wasn't as fun of a watch as I was hoping when I sought it out. I'll leave it to your discretion whether you choose to watch this or not. What I will say is that the chair is actually kind of weirdly cute. It has like little button eyes and then the crease in the cushions is the mouth, and it just looks kind of adorable sometimes, to be honest. I know that's weird, but its little eyes shine and I don't know. I'm stop talking about this now.
I think the trailer that we watched for this movie made this movie look like it was just going to be like a fun horror comedy. I think it shows all the best shots in the trailer. For that, I would say maybe not watch the trailer, just go watch the movie if this is something you want to check out. One thing that the trailer kind of leaves out, or at least I don't remember being in the trailer, is all the other stuff that has to do with the killer sofa. There's a bunch of like paranormal stuff, I guess, with the Dybbuk box and voodoo stuff and things. And I feel like all that stuff kind of made the movie a little muddled. I feel like they didn't really know what they wanted to do. The impression that I got from the trailer was this is going to be, you know, like a slasher film in the vein of like Halloween or something, or Friday the 13th, but it's a sofa killing people instead of a killer. And if that's what the movie was, then I probably would have enjoyed it much more than I did. But I feel like they kind of just went away from that a lot. Like it just needed to stay with the sofa killing people and the hilarity of that entire situation. I understand that they wanted to explain why the sofa is up walking around killing people. Even if they just kept it to a strict slasher film, I think they could have come up with something. A quick little whatever could have explained it away. It didn't need to be this over elaborate situation. In my opinion, should have just focused on the killer sofa aspect, but would not recommend. Sorry.
End of Days from 1999, which I watched on Tubi, I believe because it was about to expire. I had seen this movie in the past and I couldn't remember it very well. I definitely think that when I was younger, I liked it more, though I'm not sure why. It's really way too long. Again, the plot gets kind of overwrought. I mean, it's kind of boring in parts. I think if they had just trimmed it a little bit, it could have been a much more interesting movie. I really enjoyed seeing Arnold Schwarzenegger in a role like this, though. I'm a little bit of a sucker for horror films that involve the devil or demons or possession or things like that, because some of the few movies that I've seen that have genuinely scared me involve things like that. But this isn't really scary at all. There's not much of an appeal to it. I've definitely seen worse things, but I really can't recommend it, unfortunately. From Black from 2023, which is on Shudder. This was one of the trailers that we talked about in one of our upcoming horror movie videos, and happily, I can say that this one was not a disappointment. I did notice quite a few low ratings and ho-hum reviews on Letterboxd for this, and I'm not sure why. I thought it was really well done. I think the pacing was great. It didn't ever drag. I think there were some really interesting new things that you haven't seen in movies that are similar to this. And I mean, of course, the idea has been there before, but I just think this was really well done. I think it looked great. Some of the visual effects, practical effects on that demon guy, I really, really dug this. And I also got the emotion coming from it. I think it's really cool when you can enjoy a horror movie just for what it is. It's a slasher. It's really gory. It's this, it's that. You know what I mean? Oh, here's a big scary monster. Like, of course, horror fans love that stuff. We love the escapism and like the fantasy of it. And, you know, let's be honest, sometimes we just want to see some gore. But when you can add a little bit of heart to it, the way that this does, and just kind of feel the pain of the main character and sympathize with them and sort of want them to succeed or in some cases fail. But in this one, you know, I wanted to see her succeed, and I definitely get a little bit more invested in movies like that. I think that's part of the reason I enjoyed this one, so I would definitely recommend it.
I think the lead actress did an incredible job in this. I think she really conveyed distraught mother character very well. I think the other guy in the movie did pretty well too. He did really good at coming across as creepy, but also trying to be helpful in a way. He kind of rode this line of like, is he on her side or is he trying to do something else? Like, what's going on here? I also think this movie is a great example for you should really only use CGI to enhance things and not just use it all the goddamn time. For example, there's a entity of sorts in this film. It seems like it's 100% practical to me. It seems like it's a person in prosthetic makeup, and it looks really damn good. And the CGI that they used, they kind of gave it like this cloak of sorts, or like this aura that follows it around, and it looks really cool. Obviously, that's something that they couldn't have done practically, but I feel like other big, huge mainstream Hollywood films would have just made the entire creature CGI and it would have looked stupid. I really enjoyed this movie and I highly recommend it. Check it out.
Meander from 2020, which was also watched on Tubi. This was another film from one of our upcoming horror movies, trailer videos, and again, this did not disappoint. I really enjoyed this one as well. I think that I was a teeny tiny bit disappointed by the fact that the traps, or whatever you want to call them, in the space that the main character was trapped in got repetitive. I shouldn't complain about something so minor. I guess I just thought as things went on, it was going to get more and more intense. Beyond that, the movie looked really cool. It had a lot of really neat concepts and ideas, and even though it reminded me of a few other things, including a couple of video games like Dead Space, I still felt like it was original and I still felt invested in it. There was this specific moment when it really veered off course and just took a complete screeching tires left turn, and it changed the whole vibe of the movie for me. I don't want to say specifically what it was because I sort of think it spoils the movie, but it definitely changed the character's motivation. It changed the entire outcome of the whole film, and for me personally, I don't want to say that I didn't like it because I still really overall liked the movie a lot, especially visually. I thought there were a lot of really cool things going on. It just changed the way I was engaged in and enjoying the movie, and it took me out of it a little bit. I still definitely recommend it. Quick little thank you to our Letterboxd friend Horror Sage for mentioning our channel and his review of this film. His review is extremely well written. I just love the way that he viewed the film. Check out his review, and thanks again, buddy.
So I have to agree with Hellcat that this movie does take a left turn about halfway through. Really kind of went in a different direction that we didn't really care for. But that being said, I mean, I would still recommend this movie. I think it was fun. There's a lot of visual elements that reminded me of Cube. If you haven't seen Cube, go check it out. But I liked the execution of all the traps and her being stuck in the cube. Without giving too much away, there was a situation where she bumps into someone else and things progress. I thought that whole situation was pretty cool. So even though I didn't really care for the explanation, I still enjoyed the movie overall and would recommend it. Go check it out.
Pin from 1988, which I watched on YouTube actually. So I'm sorry to any filmmakers or anyone else that is not getting money from me watching this, but I think someone needs to release this on Blu-ray. It is one of the weirdest things I have ever seen. It's really just almost even hard to talk about because I don't want to spoil anything, but the basic premise is Terry O'Quinn has a severely creepy medical dummy in his doctor's office that he uses like a ventriloquist dummy. So his children and other children that come into his office for medical care think that the dummy can talk. And it really affects his children in extreme and profound ways that you just have to see to believe. I do recommend watching this. I don't know that it's something I would ever watch again, but it has a couple little twists and turns. It's very irksome. It's very strange, very odd. I think it's worth seeing once. Roadgames from 1981. I believe this was watched on Tubi. I'm seeing it on Shudder, which makes me second guess myself. Tubi has everything, so I'm just gonna say that's what was used. I will start off by saying that the poster for this is friggin' awesome, and I expected a lot more out of the movie because of that. I expected a lot more out of the movie because it has so many high ratings on Letterboxd. Man, oh man, this was boring. I am so sorry. I am not understanding the hype. I am not understanding why people are so gung-ho about this one. I don't even really have much to say about the movie. I actually found the main character quite annoying. You're with him the entire film. I thought his logic, reasoning, decision-making process was laughable. It frustrated me when I wasn't bored. What was with that scene where he was at what was it? Like a truck stop, a rest stop, something. I don't know. But he and Jamie Lee Curtis' character pulled over because they thought they found some killer guy he was looking for or whatever. There was this little moment where Stacy Keach went and robbed some guy's bike and rode around on it for like 0.2 seconds and then just like crashed and fell off of it. And I just thought, was this a mistake? Did he really crash the bike or was this a part of the script? Whether it was intentional or an accident, why was it left in the film? I think this movie felt way too long too. 101 minutes does not sound that long, but boy did it feel long. I just cannot recommend this movie. I'm sorry.
So I'm just going to start by reading the synopsis that's on Letterboxd so you can see how interesting this movie sounds just by hearing this. A truck driver plays a cat and mouse game with a mysterious serial killer in a van who lures young female hitchhiker victims on a desolate Australian highway. We've been trying to seek out 80s movies that we've never seen before. This movie sounds awesome. And it has Jamie Lee Curtis in it, and the truck driver is played by Stacy Keach. But man, it's just not a fun movie. I kind of expected Duel with maybe just a little hint of 80s slashers thrown in there a little bit. The movie opens pretty well, in my opinion. There is this interesting scene where they show the serial killer guy and he's in a hotel room with this girl, and I'm not going to give anything away, but I just think the way that was all shot and everything, I thought that was cool. I was like, man, this movie's going to rock. Once that scene ends, in my opinion, the rest of the movies never comes close to that scene. So I probably wouldn't recommend this movie.
E4 from 2012. I watch a lot of short films, mostly on YouTube. This specific thing was on Tubi, and the plot actually sounds really cool. There's a time loop thing where some friends get stuck in an underground parking garage. I think maybe this popped up as a recommendation after Killer Sofa was over. I can't remember, but regardless, it's only 50 minutes, which is why I mentioned the whole short film thing. Basically, they had a really cool idea, and I applaud them for trying to commit it to film. The result was not entertaining or good in any way, shape, or form. You know, I appreciate the effort, but didn't really have a good time watching this and can't recommend it.
So again, we have another case of, hey, the synopsis sounds awesome. Let's watch it. I am usually a big sucker for time manipulation, as I like to call it, type storylines. Although this was a freaky time situation that was going on, I just feel like it didn't really pull me in like most time manipulation things do. I won't give too much away, but I feel like The situation with the stairwell and the elevator, I thought was cool with how they were doing the time stuff. But then as it went on, as the movie progressed, we both kind of checked out. It just wasn't what we thought it was going to be, I guess. I don't even really know what we thought it was going to be, but I feel like this was a really cool idea, and they obviously had the resources to film something. I mean, obviously this is low budget, but they had the resources, the cameras, a crew, something. Feel like if maybe they just had something more to put into this, it could have been so much better. I applaud them for making a film because it's hard as shit to get a bunch of people together and make something. So good job on that, but I would not recommend this.
Another little quick shout out here for a rewatch of Megan from 2022, or Mathregan, if you will. Just saw this pop up on Prime randomly and said, you know what? Yes, I would like to see this again. It's sort of one of those guilty pleasure type things, though I don't really feel guilty about anything I like. If I enjoy it, I enjoy it. I feel like I equate this to the weird, slightly crappy Child's Play remake because there's just something likable about it. It's kind of a mess and it's kind of ridiculous, but it's fun to watch. I don't know what else to say. I do recommend watching it.
Knock at the Cabin from 2023, which I watched on a rented Netflix disc. For those who are unaware that are listening to this, this is the latest M. Night Shyamalan film, and it also stars Dave Bautista. And I'm just going to start by saying that I think the main reason I rented this film and watched it was because it had Dave Bautista in it. Hellcat and I have pretty much checked out of the M. Night bandwagon a very long time ago. I remember when The Visit came out, a lot of people were freaking out saying, oh man, he's back. I went and watched it and I really just did not like it. I found a couple of plot holes in that film. I just couldn't get into it. I'm sorry. I don't know. I really don't know what the hype was all about. So here we are with Knock at the Cabin. I really liked the idea that this movie was going for, but I really feel like the execution really fell flat. So basically, just to give you a quick little synopsis of what's happening here, Dave Bautista and these three other people come to this cabin in the middle of pretty much nowhere, and there is a family there. There's two guys and their daughter, and they basically say that they're here to prevent the end of the world. In order to do so, one of those three people need to be sacrificed and killed by the other two, while these four doomsday people, I guess, watch. That's pretty much the inciting incident that gets the movie going. I think I'm probably going to get into some spoiler territory stuff, so if you don't want to be spoiled for Knock at the Cabin, skip to this time in the video. If not, let's continue. You've been warned. So the reason why I didn't really care for this movie is because the entire movie is kind of jumping back and forth between, are these doomsday people full of crap and they're really just nuts? Everything's in their head. They're wacky. They're Looney Tunes. And they just think they're stopping the apocalypse when really it's all a bunch of crap and they're psychos. And then on the flip side, are they telling the truth? Is this really going to happen? As the viewer, the movie kind of flips back and forth and really tries to confuse you and make you really guess what's going to happen. I'm going to be honest with you and say that from the beginning, I was convinced that the apocalypse was coming and that Bautista was being truthful, and I believed him. So every time they tried to push this, oh, they're crazy weirdos on the internet that have gotten together in real life and in trying to carry out some kind of thing, and it's just all a bunch of crap, I didn't believe it. I was like, no, I think the apocalypse is coming. So at the end of the movie, when the apocalypse does come, I was like, well, yeah, I fucking knew it was coming an hour and a half ago. So it was a little disappointing in that regard because I was like, what are you trying to do here, M. Night? I feel like I've seen movies before. I can't think of any off the top of my head, but I know I've seen movies in the past where they did this flip-flop type situation where you're convinced it's one thing, but then the movie tricks you into thinking it's something else, and then flip-flops back and forth enough that by the end of the movie, you're like, you know what? I don't even know what's going on. And then possibly even throws you a curveball where there's a third outcome that you never even thought. Overall, I would say that this movie isn't really that great. I'm not really sure the point to this movie. I'm not sure if there was some kind of message they were trying to put. The only good thing that I could really say about this is I think that Dave Bautista did a fantastic job with his role. He probably has the most dialogue in this film than probably any movie he's ever been in. I think he really knocked it out of the park, in my opinion. And I think he really showed that he could have a lead role and have a lot of dialogue and be able to carry a movie and not just be, a sidekick or part of a group or something. So for that, I praise it. But literally anything else, I didn't like it, didn't really care for this movie, and I would not recommend it. I talked way too much about that.
The Other Lamb from 2019. Watched this on Hulu because it was about to expire, and I do not regret watching it. It was a very beautiful film. It was disturbing. I don't even necessarily know if I 100% agree with the genre being labeled as horror, but I presume that that's probably because a lot of the dreams or visions that our main character has are definitely horrifying. There's some pretty gruesome stuff going on. And the plot itself, all these women being in this cult led by some egotistical crazy dude, that's obviously scary all of in itself. There were lots of very odd things in this film. I know some would call it quote unquote artsy fartsy. I know some would say it's really slow. I know some would say it's boring. I personally was quite invested. I thought the acting was phenomenal and it was so beautiful. It was beautifully filmed. Some of the locations they filmed in, the colors, the framing, just the cinematography, everything. Like this movie looked amazing. I do definitely recommend it, but not for fans that are more gimme blood, gimme gore, gimme slasher, gimme action kind of stuff, because this is definitely a slower, more artsy type of a horror film. Sort of maybe like if you enjoy The Witch.
Lifeblood from 2009, which I rented on a Netflix disc. So Hellcat and I like to get obsessed with certain actors or actresses, and we end up renting or seeking out pretty much any movie that has their name attached to it. This movie has Scout Taylor Compton in it, and that's literally the only reason why I wanted to see this film. Not really a fan of hers anymore, but for some reason I still just say, oh, Scout's in it, let's watch it. So if there's anybody out there that wants to see this movie for the same reason I did, because Scout Taylor Compton's in it, please don't. Because Scout Taylor Compton is in this movie for probably a total of 2 minutes of screen time. I was thinking that she was going to be one of the main characters, but she wasn't. It's just weird to me that in 2009, Rob Zombie's Halloween 2 comes out and she's the main character. But then also you have this movie and she's in it for 2 minutes and she's just like a throwaway character. Like literally anybody could have played that character. It didn't have to be Scout Taylor Compton. I'm not sure why she did it. Who knows? Hopefully she got a good payday from it. But on to the movie. I don't know. To me personally, there wasn't really much redeemable about this. It was pretty boring. Just didn't really care for it. So I do not recommend it.
The Nun from 2018. Again, just a flick that popped up on Prime. I had never seen it. I know that it was very widely panned and not very well liked. Now I understand why. Although this was almost right at that, sweet spot, hour and a half mark at 96 minutes, it felt way longer than that. I like those Farmigas. I think they're good actresses and everything, but this just, no. I really can't recommend this movie, and I'm sure if you've already seen it, you would say the same. I guess there were a couple cool little moments that I found creepy, but I just thought that a lot of it was silly. The characters were making poor decisions that just weren't very logical. It's kind of like, okay, we have this idea for this scare, or we have this idea for this plot point, and then they just wrote around that and made the characters be stupid so they could make it happen. So I do not recommend. And hey, you know what? Just found out they're making a sequel, The Nun 2. Isn't that something to look forward to? Insert cricket sounds here.
Mischief Night from 2014, which I watched on a rented Netflix disc. So the gist of this movie is that there is a masked killer, and I guess he's going around killing people, or he has killed people. There's this teenage girl and she's babysitting and she starts being stalked by this masked guy. The movie kind of takes a left turn because all of a sudden her and the killer start communicating with one another. It kind of goes in this romantic situation where they're into one another. She's into it. And At first, he's kind of like, you're weird, what the heck? But then he starts getting into it, and it turns into this romantic thing. And at one point, there's a sex scene. But there's one glaring issue in this entire situation. And that's the fact that, do you remember me at the beginning saying that it's a teenage babysitter? This guy looks like he's in his 30s. He's stalking this teenage babysitter, and now they're being romantic with one another. This is weird to me. I'm sorry. I'm not sure what the point of this movie was, but just for that aspect alone, you lost me. Sorry. I don't have a problem with the concept to this movie. I just think that maybe they should have done it between two adults, is all I'm saying. For that, I do not recommend this movie at all. Pass. Hard pass.
As always, we thank you so much for watching. Leave us a comment if you have any horror movie recommendations, and we will add them to our watch list. Until next time.